Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Patterson and Michael Remis.
All right, what's good? Welcome to another episode of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. I'm your fill-in host, not Andrew Hustler Patterson, but Brandon Rewucki here with you guys today. Super jacked to be here. Matt Leibel is going to be filling in, meanwhile, on the chair for Monday's show. And then Huss is going to be back. He's taking some well-deserved vacay time, but he'll be back with you guys on Tuesday. Michael Remis is still here, though. He's going to make sure everything's up and running. He's joining me for a really, really big show today to wrap up the week. I mean, the expansion draft is just around the corner and protection lists are coming up soon. So we'll get into that. Plus, of course, the debate that's ripping this entire city apart. A couple other moves across the NHL and then the Open Championship as well. Plus, Ryan Kennedy from the Hockey News will stop by to get us ready for the NHL Draft. And Scott Cullen will keep the hockey talk going as well. Big shout out quickly to the Winnipeg Sports Talk family of sponsors: Royal Sports, Nick and Nikki DQ Group, Boston Pizza, Not Auto Corp, Little Brown Jug, Breezy Bend, Assiniboia Downs, Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge, where Huss is chilling out this weekend, as well as Cool Bet Canada. Let's bring in the brains behind the operation right now. Michael Remis is here with me today. Remo, I hear you got some lunch and you're ready to go now. So how's everything going?
Yeah, feeling great, Brandon. Thank you for coming and taking the time to fill in. This is awesome. Shout out to everyone in chat. You just type a big hello. Happy Friday. And yeah, I mean, this is the deadline where you're like little more than 24 hours. I believe it's tomorrow at 4 Central Time, where the test is over, pencils down, hand in your expansion protect lists. I don't think we'll be hearing about those until Monday, but teams are scrambling. We had a trade yesterday with Colorado. Make sure your teams are going to try really hard, Brandon, not to lose a good player. And I think we saw this last time where teams were giving away 2 players to protect 1 player, and it did not work. And this time, instead of, giving away 2 to Seattle, they're saying, hey, you know what, we'll just pay guys not to play with us. In the case of Florida buying out Yandel, or Minnesota buying out 2 guys, and we'll have 15 million dead cap space for 2 years in 2 years. And then Colorado trading away Ryan Graves. I think that trade actually benefits both teams, so I do like that move. It could have been a target for the Jets. I saw Murat had him in the Athletic as a target, but you know what? This is fun time. Jets are going to lose a player, probably a player that you like, but we will wait and see, and the debate goes on.
Yeah, man, I'm fascinated to see if there are any side deals or how many of them are going to be with Seattle to protect and not allow a certain player to be picked by the Kraken. Elliot Friedman on his 31 Thoughts podcast actually said that apparently the asking price right now to protect a player on your roster starts with a first and a third round pick. So, I mean, the price is just through the roof right now. If that's the case, obviously the Jets aren't going to pay that much to protect anybody that could be selected from them. But I don't know, man. I don't know if we see any team across the NHL, no matter how valuable that asset is, protected with a first and a third round pick. Hey, there's a debate to be ahead here in the city, not about the first and the third round pick, but just who's going to be up for grabs. You're going to have to show me. I want to be able to see the chat here because I was listening to the episode yesterday and the chat and the Winnipeg Sports Talk fans turned on you immediately the second the Stanley DeMelo debate kicked into high gear again. So I'm a little nervous to even unleash my actual opinion on this. But you released a poll yesterday, right? That had the results of fans picking either DeMelo or Stanley, right?
I put it up again. I have the poll. It's ready to go. One last time, guys. Who are the Jets protecting? Stanley? I think it honestly might be a moot point because Appleton seems to be the play. There are a lot of defensemen available, I think, who are more experienced than Logan Stanley, who've played bigger minutes. Mark Giordano's a name being floated around. Shane Gostisbehere, Troy Stetcher. I've seen, there's a lot of solid D, but I'm glad that you're here, Brandon, because Hustler and I couldn't seem to agree yesterday. He's been on the Stanley train for a while, and I was saying, guys, DeMelo Dylan DeMelo, he's number one pair D. You saw what the team looked like without him. He made Morrissey a much better player. Like, are you protecting a first pair D or a third pair D? Which one would you rather protect? I think when you put it like that, you're going to say, I'm going to take the better player. Like, well, what if, hey, this third pair D, he's 6'7". You know who else is 6'7" or 6'9" actually? Hall of Famers, Zdeno Chara. What if this guy turns into Hall of Famer? And I think that could be if that did happen, I think that's pretty slim chance. That could be a couple years down the road. And you look at the way the contracts are set up, they got Scheifele, Wheeler, Hellbuck, DeMelo, all three more, good for 3 more years. That's your window, 3 more years. Who's going to help you win this year more? Well, I think it's the guy who's the first pair D, making $3 million for 3 more years. So I think that's the guy you protect. But again, we're kind of arguing about this, but I do think Appleton is the play.
I know. That's the funniest part. We're going to spend a lot of this show, and you guys have spent, a ton of time on this in previous shows talking about DeMelo Stanley. But to me, the easy pick is actually Mason Appleton, because there's not going to be, Philly with either JVR or Jake Voracek, Pittsburgh potentially with Zucker. There's a couple other teams where there's some decent players available up front, but Mason Appleton at, what is it, $900K? I just don't see how Seattle passes up the opportunity to take him, and they are probably able to find a solid defenseman or two throughout the rest of the expansion draft. So the debate to me is almost a moot point, but it's still fun to have. I would lean, and you touched on it there, I would lean towards picking Dylan DeMelo. I think it's a little bit closer than maybe the pro DeMelo crowd makes it out to be, just because, and the potential, we kind of joke about it, but the potential has to be discussed, right? And it's a legitimate thing because, he just finished his rookie season, although he is, 21, 22 years old. And it was in extremely sheltered minutes, actually the most sheltered across the entire NHL this past season. But there is the chance he takes another step. You can't just completely exclude that from the conversation. Logan Stanley could take another leap. Maybe he's just one of these late bloomers, and by next season, he's, a borderline top 4 defenseman. I don't know how likely it is, but it's still a possibility. And, I've made the mistake in the past, and I think, a lot of the analytics crowd probably makes the same mistake too. But, I thought Brandon Tanev was a borderline NHLer after his first season. I didn't think there was a whole lot there. And then he works on his game, and now he's at the point where I think he's a really effective third-line player. Andrew Kopp is another example, a guy that proved last season he can play on a second line. Ben Sherratt's another example, right? Just here in Winnipeg. And there's a ton across the NHL. So, there is the chance still that Logan Stanley could be, I think maybe a realistic ceiling would be a second pair defenseman and maybe Neil Pionk's partner. But, having said all that still, I don't know how you push everything Dylan DeMelo has done over the past 2 seasons completely aside just to protect somebody based on potential, because we know what Dylan DeMelo is, right? Dylan DeMelo is a top 4 defenseman. Dylan DeMelo, whether it's Josh Morrissey or Logan Stanley, whoever he plays with suddenly appears to play a lot better, right? That's his big skill, it seems like. Whoever gets put beside him is playing up to their potential. So that's why I would lean towards Dylan DeMelo. But I would say this. There is one scenario for me where exposing Dylan DeMelo and having him picked actually makes sense from the Jets' perspective. And it's kind of a guess here. We don't totally know this. But to me, if you're Kevin Cheveldayoff and you know that there's a defenseman out there that's a right-hand shot that is an improvement over Dylan DeMelo and can play beside Josh Morrissey, and you're targeting them either in trade or free agency, then to me it makes sense to potentially lose Dylan DeMelo because you would be bringing his replacement in. It's a dicey as hell proposition because there's no guarantee you pull that off. But that scenario would make sense to me. Other than that, though, I don't know if I take the risk. Fortunately, though, you and me both agree that I think Mason Appleton is going to be the guy selected. But there's another scenario that we should talk about, too, because, there may be a chance that a certain Winnipeg Jets forward gets dealt either now, soon, in a couple of weeks, right? Because Andrew Kopp has arb rights and is 1 year away from free agency.
Yeah, I saw Murat tweeting about this, and we spoke with him earlier this week. He's an RFA. We know what happened last time with the negotiations. He went to arbitration. He wasn't happy about it. He had a career year. Now, I mean, he's been a third line forward. He's kind of moved up and down, but I think it's pretty clear, he's kind of a middle six. On a strong team, he's a very solid third line. He plays PK, plays all positions. What's Andrew Kopp's, next contract going to be? And, are the Jets better off selling high and maybe trying to keep Appleton? Because it seems like I don't want to say interchangeable, but he would be a good replacement. But then you got to see if you trade Kopp before the protected lists are in. I mean, then you have to protect the next guy, another defenseman. So I'm not sure, but maybe we have seen players who go to arbitration in the past that are overhard clients, like Ryan Johansson was one of them. More often than not, those guys do get moved eventually. So I'm a big fan of Andrew Kopp. He's came on this program, great guy. He's done a lot for the team, but I mean his value with his point total, it's at an all-time high. Yeah. And I think if you're playing like a third line role with him, you got to try to find that maybe for a cheaper guy rather than a guy who's making close to is he gonna get $5 million deal this year?
It's at least 4.
Yeah,
right?
at least 4. Yeah.
It depends on how long it goes till. Yeah, like Andrew Cobb's a beauty. To me, it's not even a discussion about his game or anything, right?
Yeah.
And to be honest, the team could use more Andrew Cobbs, guys that are defensively responsible and everything like that. But you're right. Like you have to, at some point as an organization, decide, what's of more value to us down the road. Is it going to be, Andrew Cobb, or is it going to be, I don't know, a second and a fourth? And you can kind of either replenish the prospect pool or use those assets in a trade. It's a discussion that, I mean, they've obviously have had over the past little while. For me, at least, there's 2 scenarios that I would go down this. I would have no problem if the Jets sign Andrew Cobb to a, 3-4 year deal, and he's in the fold for long term. And you know what? If you lose Mason Appleton, that's the price of doing business with the Kraken coming in. But if he's only willing to sign a 1-year deal, which if I'm Andrew Cobb, that's probably what I try to do because I'm so close to free agency. But if he only wants to sign the 1-year deal, to me, you have to trade him because he's going to be gone after this season. And then you lose both him and Mason Appleton in the span of a couple of months for absolutely nothing. So that's the real decision that Chevy's going to have to make here. I do think we see Andrew Cobb get traded. I don't know if Kevin Cheveldayoff wants to deal with overcharge anymore. And I wonder, too, if any upcoming draft prospects have Kurt Overhart as their agent, does Chevy just shy away from drafting guys like that anymore? Because it's like to lose 2 guys from the same agent, that's pretty unprecedented. I just wonder if you don't want to deal with Kurt Overhart anymore if you're Kevin Cheveldayoff.
Yeah, the other guy, in case anyone forgot, it was Jacob Trouba, who had the whole, press release dreaming to be a top pair, right-handed, right shot D on the right side. I'll never forget that press release. I think in Jets history when he demanded the trade. I mean, he got paid. I don't know if he's kind of fallen down the depth chart now that Adam Fox has emerged as a Norris Trophy winner. But I don't think that you could shy. I remember in baseball there were teams that wouldn't negotiate with Scott Boras. I mean, he's a big agent who would do stuff like that too. I think you got to be open to everyone, but I mean, if he's having clients that consistently are at odds with management, then maybe it is something you do. Maybe you just factor it into your decision making. But I think every player is definitely unique. We have had a lot of questions in chat. This one was interesting to me, and I did consider this before, Brandon. It was Owen Y. He said, serious question. If the Jets exposed Morrissey, what do you think the chances are the Kraken select him? His contract has been listed as one of the worst value contracts in the league. And I kind of considered, exposing Morrissey, but I think the Jets are a loyal organization. He signed here long term. He's invested in the community. I think while he had a down season, I'm willing to discount this past season, as I've said before. It was a weird season for everyone, just with the protocols and everything that went on. I think it's possible he can bounce back, but that is, you look at his contract, Brandon. It is a long time for him. I wonder if they would select him. I'm not sure, but I don't think the Jets are gonna. I think the Jets are invested in him, and I don't think they would expose him. I don't know what you think.
Morrissey and Wheeler, we've heard that from fans, right? Where I don't think Seattle. I definitely don't think Seattle would pick Blake Wheeler if he waived his no movement and all that. But again, a moot point because the Jets aren't going to ask him to. I don't think Seattle would take Josh Morrissey. But I mean, if you were the Jets and you got to the point that you were going to expose him, wouldn't you just trade him? Because I think he still has a lot of value around the NHL. You know what I mean? Like you could get some assets for him instead of just losing the cap hit for nothing. But I guess the big thing with Morrissey for me is just that I think the team hasn't helped him out at all the past couple of seasons, right? Like his defensive partners, we know he's played well with Dylan DeMelo, but he's been asked to carry Nathan Beaulieu, Sammy Niku at times, Tucker Pullman as well. There's like 4 defensemen on the planet that can play top pair minutes with basically anybody, right? Like there's the Hedmans and, the OCs and the McCarrs and Fox and, maybe a couple others. But Josh Morrissey just isn't that guy, and he needs a decent amount of support beside him. So I think we'll still see some good hockey from Josh Morrissey. I don't know if he's going to maybe live up to the contract that he signed, but I think if you get him a solid partner, and even if he played, with Dylan DeMelo for a full season, this is kind of the one thing too, when we talk about the Jets defense that makes it so tricky on how to improve it moving forward here. But wouldn't you agree, Remo, that on a championship team, Morrissey DeMelo would be a really good second pair?
Yes, I would agree that they would be a good second pair, and that's why they need to get a top guy. And I saw Murat writing in The Athletic, a bunch of guys, that the Jets could target, some of them being, I think one of them, Mark Giordano was interesting. We saw Alex Edler becoming a free agent. Now those are kind of past their prime guys, but they're an option. One thing I want to raise about the defense. So let's say the Kraken does take Appleton, and the Jets D prospects are, Heinola, Sandberg, and Stanley. You think the Jets are going to go in and play 3 young defensemen, rookies, in the lineup? I think it's a situation where you have too many young guys. You need to trade one of them and bring in an established guy, because we think, Brand, you would agree, the Jets need a top D, and I think 2 other D as well. And I don't know how active they're going to be, and I don't know how much they're going to play these young guys, but they definitely need some help. I think there's more and more D becoming available. You saw Yandel bought out. If you wanted a bottom pair, Tyson Berry's becoming a UFA. But they need those are offensive guys. They need guys who can keep the puck out of the net. But I'm just concerned about them going ahead with these 3 groups of young D and not having any established guys to help out, Morrissey, DeMelo, and Pionkin, who I think that's pretty much what you're going with. And then we'll see who the other 3 are. And I don't think you're going with 3 young guys.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about it because it's not going to happen. Like, they're just not going to do it. Paul Maurice has never done it. I don't see why he would change now. I mean, he said it after the season, right? He said, I might be paraphrasing, but that he was most comfortable with like 1 rookie at a time on the blue line. So I don't think that's going to be the case. It's just the Jets. And there's a lot of teams that are in this position too. But the Jets, if they could grab that no doubt about it number 1 defenseman, everything else really falls into place after that. But it's just so hard to do it. Now, this is a rare offseason where it's actually possible because Dougie Hamilton is, slated to hit free agency. I know Seth Jones is kind of a divisive name, but he's been a top pair defenseman, and was a Norris finalist almost just a couple of seasons ago. So there's a couple options there for the Jets to make happen. We'll see if they get it done, though. I'm not a huge fan of the just grab 2 guys, grab 2 top 4 defensemen, and we'll figure it out moving forward. I think the Jets need to aim a little bit higher than that. We'll see, though, if they're able to find a way to get that done. We'll continue the hockey talk here. We'll get back to the expansion draft and everything else a little bit later on in the show, but we're going to talk some draft. The 2021 draft is coming up pretty soon. So Ryan Kennedy, the prospect expert for the Hockey News, is going to join us in just a few minutes here. But I do want to mention this quick. Royal Sports, the original sports superstar here in Winnipeg. And actually, Remo, my first ever job was at Royal Sports, if you could believe that or not. But Royal Sports is the biggest selection: hockey, soccer, basketball, baseball, all kinds of gear, along with fitness and camping equipment if you're heading out with us to Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge later on this weekend. All of that and so much more. So make sure you check out Royal Sports at 650 Raleigh and EK, as well as 750 Pembina Highway. It's also going to be way too hot to humanly breathe outside. So what better way to cool off than with a blizzard or two with Nikki and Nikki DQ Groove, 4 locations, Northgate, Niverville, Polo Park, and St. Anne's Road. So you can stop by for a blizzard or a burger today and be the hero at your next gathering by bringing in a famous DQ ice cream cake. My go-to blizzard is the fattest one imaginable. Mint ice cream with extra cheesecake bits. You can also order their cakes on Instagram at DQ Manitoba. Also, patios are open, and it's perfect patio weather as well. And Boston Pizza lounges and restaurants are open as well during patio season. So why don't you head down there and try out the new Honeydale fried chicken sandwich or the Burger Italiano and new summer cocktails, including the Bulldog Margarita Fish Bowl, the White Sangria Smash, as well as the Peachy Mojito Royale at your neighborhood Boston Pizza. We're bringing in now Ryan Kennedy from the Hockey News, the draft and prospect expert. Ryan, how's everything going today, man?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me.
You know, I was checking out your Twitter page yesterday, and I noticed your pinned tweet. And for those that haven't seen it before, it's actually a video of you participating in the Wingate, which for those that don't know is when prospects at the combine and everything ride the bike like a madman until they throw up, essentially. I think that was 5 years ago, right? Have you actually recovered since then?
I have. It was actually the OHL draft combine. So it was me competing against 15-year-olds. There was a couple of other reporters there. And I'll never forget it because the Wingate is the shorter of the 2 bikes. You know, at the NHL combine, they also do the VO2 Max, which is longer. The Wingate, I think it's like a minute or 30 seconds. And they drop weights. It's weighted. And you got to pedal as fast as you can. And I didn't throw up, but I had like an entire protein bar and an energy shake. And then I went and got Chinese food. Like I ate about 2,000 calories just to recover from, the exertion that I put into that. And I didn't even go that fast. I was the best out of the reporters, but the kid just killed me.
Hey, man, that's better than I would have done. And I will say we do share the same post-workout meal, except my workout consists of 10 minutes walking on the elliptical and flipping through channels on TV trying to find something to watch. Let's talk draft. The draft isn't that far away. I mean, the expansion draft comes first. The NHL draft is a few days after. I mean, just tell us what it's like. I mean, we thought the previous draft was unique, but this one maybe even more so. As somebody that watches and studies prospects for a living, how in the world do you grade prospects in a year where most of the junior leagues were shut down and these kids barely even played?
It's pretty tough. And it's going to be interesting because next year's draft will also be impacted because, a lot of NHL regional scouts, they kind of build up their books from a couple of years of data. And obviously they're not going to have anything for this year going forward for next year. But, particularly in the OHL where they had no season, you really have to kind of trust your instincts and think back to, what kind of projection you had for that kid as an underager. Because other than the kids that played for Canada at the World Under-18s, and there were some that went to Europe, there are kids that literally played 0 games this year. And you're going to have to make a decision on them at some point in the draft or just decide, hey, we're not confident in that lack of information. So we're going to go for a kid in, say, the USHL where they had a full season, or, the Quebec League played pretty close to a normal season and they did have playoffs. So there was a little more normalcy there. And then, of course, this year is pretty unique where you have 3 kids that played for the University of Michigan that will likely go in the top 10, where, again, you had a fairly normal schedule there. So it's going to be very difficult. And, when I do these rankings, I'm talking to scouts and just trying to get a sense of the range for these kids. But, more so than ever, you're going to have kids go in, maybe the early 2nd round that some teams wouldn't take in the 5th round and vice versa. It's going to be very interesting to see how it all shakes out.
Do you really think that? I mean, you touched on it there, but for example, OHL prospects, are they going to get absolutely hammered as far as where they're picked this year as opposed to other years?
Some of them might. And, the OHL has been one of the top feeder leagues for the draft, if not the top feeder league. But, when you get into those players that were probably second or third rounders, but they didn't play at all this year, maybe they turn into fifth or sixth rounders just because teams don't have the same sample size. And when you're talking about a 17-year-old, you're seeing so much growth just over that one season. So you might have seen the kid as a 16-year-old, but can you accurately figure out what he's going to be as an 18 or a 19-year-old with all that missing data in the middle? It's a huge challenge, and teams are going to approach it differently. But I wouldn't be surprised if, in 3-4 years, there's going to be some kids that were drafted this year that will be NHL stars that we're not talking about right now. And that always happens, but I think it's going to happen even more with this draft class, because certain teams are going to hit on kids where they nail the projection, and others will not be so lucky. And it's going to be very intriguing to see what happens sort of 3-4 years down the line.
So how would you best describe this year's draft class? Because it's a little different, at least from some previous draft classes, where I think we have a sense of who's going to be the number one overall pick, but there's not that standout player or players right at the top. How would you best characterize this year's class?
I would say it's looking like an okay draft, a decent draft in terms of high-end players. I think if you need a defenseman, this is a great year for you, because Owen Power is, likely going to go first overall to the Buffalo Sabres. But you also have Simon Edvinsson from Sweden. You have Luke Hughes, the younger brother of Jack Hughes and Quinn Hughes. You have Brant Clark out of the OHL, who went over to Slovakia and looked pretty good. And then, of course, great for Canada at the World Under-18s. You have Corson Kuhlmans, Carson Lambos, Scott Morrow from Chateau St. Mary's. Like, there's a lot of defensemen with intrigue attached to them. If you need a number one center, you might kind of be out of luck. Matty Beniers is probably the best forward in the draft, but he's probably more of a two-way center, maybe a really good number two. Maybe Chaz Lucius or Mason McTavish can be number one centers, but it's certainly not a year where you point to, a Connor McDavid or a Jack Eichel or an Austin Matthews and say, yeah, that's a number one center that's going to be a difference maker in the NHL, no question. This year, there's a little more, variance there and a little more projection, and maybe the upsides aren't as high as they will be, say, next year when Shane Wright goes first overall, or the year after that when Connor Bedard goes first overall.
Now, before we get into potential targets for the Jets with their first round pick, you mentioned a name that people here in Winnipeg are very familiar with, but can you just touch on good old Winnipeg boy Carson Lambos, and I guess just where he's expected to go, and then what his ceiling might be? Because I know before this past season, he was maybe slated as a potential top 10, top 5 pick.
Yeah, I think he's probably still a top 20 pick, maybe even top 15. Went over to Finland and looked decent there, playing some hockey. Came back here, missed a lot of time. Didn't get to play at the World Under-18s because he had a medical procedure that he had to undergo right beforehand, and so he wasn't physically capable of playing just yet, which was very unfortunate. But scouts do have a book on him. Great transitional defenseman. Get the puck up the ice. I think he's still got that potential to be maybe a top pairing guy. Maybe not necessarily number one, but maybe a number two, or maybe a team's number 3 or 4 at worst. But I think this is a kid that we've seen some pretty nice upside, and to me, he seems like a nice, safe player where I don't see a lot going wrong with Carson Lambos. I think he's the kind of kid where you say, yeah, he's going to make the NHL, and it's just a matter of, what's his role going to be. And that's going to be crucial in the next couple of seasons just to see how he grows into his game and how he develops.
We're speaking to Ryan Kennedy, the senior writer and prospect expert for the Hockey News here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Brandon Rewucki filling in for Andrew Hustler Patterson. Ryan, The Jets hold the 18th overall pick. It's really tough to try and pinpoint a player that you might lean towards the Jets selecting because there's just so much potential balls up in the air until you get to pick number 18. But who do you think is in that range right now that you think might be a real nice fit when the Winnipeg Jets head to the podium with the 18th overall pick?
Yeah, well, if I'm looking at, I got the draft preview here that we put out on Newsstand. Nice. Thank you. Seamless. I had Brendan Othman from the Flint Firebirds of the OHL, 18th overall. And obviously he couldn't play in the OHL this season, but he did go over to Switzerland, played against pros, played against men, looked pretty good. I thought he was very good for Canada at the World Under-18s. This is a kid that can really score goals. He's a winger, but he's got some nice grit and sandpaper to his game too. Like he'll go into the hard areas and he'll play physical. He'll get you off your game and still be able to contribute offense. In the magazine we said, he could be sort of that Gabriel Landeskog guy where, he might not be the most talented guy on the line, but he's the guy that you need to sort of stir the drink and make things happen. You look at Winnipeg's pool right now, and they've got, a very nice offensive player in Cole Perfetti coming up. They've got some nice defensemen like Billy Heinola on the way up, and obviously Heinola's already played some games for the Jets. So, they're pretty well balanced. There's not one particular position that I think they need to hit. I'm looking at Othman. Oscar Allison would be another player from Sweden that's kind of in that range. If they're looking for a defenseman, Carson Lambos is right there. I had him 17th in draft preview, so he could certainly be that hometown boy that comes to the Jets. He's in that range, and there's also, if they're looking for a center, Atu Rati, a player who we thought might even be first overall about a year ago, and he's had some tough development time and sort of slid down the rankings, but still a big kid who defends well and works hard. If Winnipeg's looking for kind of a different vibe there, Rati might be the kind of guy that ends up being, a really good third-line center and maybe even a second-line center if he finds his goal-scoring touch again.
I was going to ask you about your thoughts on the Jets' defensive prospects at least, but that you kind of knocked me off my chair there for a second. Atu Rati was the lock-in number one, a year and a half ago? What's gone wrong to the point that the Jets might be able to take him middle of the first round?
Well, he just had a really tough year where, he was snake bit offensively. He couldn't score in the Liga, playing in Finland against men. They sent him to junior, had trouble scoring there. Because Finland didn't have an actual physical camp for the World Junior team, he didn't really have a chance to show off his stuff in a camp setting. So he was left off the World Junior team, even though he played for Finland's World Junior squad the year before as an underager. So you put all those factors together, and then you have everybody else that was kind of passing him because they were having better seasons. So it's really a matter of, do you believe that he has enough offense in his game and this was just a bad year, or is he more suited to a bottom six role? And that obviously impacts how high a team's going to take him.
When you talk about the Winnipeg Jets prospect pool, Cole Perfetti is obviously, I think, the jewel of everything right now and someone fans are really excited about. But maybe the most important might be on the blue line. Logan Stanley breaks through to the NHL last year, but Billy Heinola and Dylan Sandberg, I think, are the names that really excite Jets fans. I don't know how many Moose games you watched this past season, but what do you think the, ceiling would be for a Billy Heinola and a Dylan Sandberg?
Well, I like both players, and I think they bring very different skill sets to the ice, which is very nice if you're a Jets fan. And, again, Billy Heinola was always sort of seen as the poor man's Miro Heiskanen, which is still a great compliment because Miro Heiskanen is a fantastic defenseman for the Dallas Stars. But, that's sort of the player you're getting, a puck mover, very intelligent, very mobile. Dylan Sandberg has some really nice dynamic elements to his game. He's got a big shot, got the great size, winning pedigree coming from the University of Minnesota Duluth. And even, when he played high school at Hermantown in Minnesota, he was a state champion there for the Hawks. So I think both of them are, again, probably in that sort of 2 to 4 range. I think that's what you're looking at. in your defensive depth chart. And I think, based on what Josh Morrissey did, particularly, I think, near the end of the season and even the playoffs, even though, the Jets didn't have much success there, they did get to the second round. I feel like Josh Morrissey has established himself as kind of the guy. Like, he can be that number one, even if he's not like a superstar, but you've got this great supporting cast behind him. And as you mentioned, Logan Stanley taking a big step forward, I think, helps as well. Things are starting to sort of come into focus for the Jets on the defense core. And obviously that's been a big issue the past couple of years. So I think that's a positive development. It's just a matter of how quickly Heinola and Sandberg can get into the NHL picture.
I want to get to one of your articles you wrote on the Hockey News about a big name player on the trade market, but one last draft one for you here. It's such a unique season, and it's going to be tough, or maybe it's going to be easier with prospects not playing as much as they've used to. But Tampa Bay built their roster primarily on picking superstars and gems after the first round. Who do you think are some of the players this year that, with either a second or a third round pick, teams could target that could potentially blossom into a major contributor down the road?
Well, one name that comes to mind for me is Sasha Talagan. He played out in the BCHL this season. He's originally from Boston. His dad is actually a former Russian hockey player turned skills coach. So obviously, when you think of Talagan, it's all about the hands, all about the creativity. Played for Chilliwack. I watched him a bunch this year just on video. I thought he was very intriguing. And, he's headed to, if I'm not mistaken, the University of Connecticut. I believe he just switched his commitment recently. But that's the sort of player that I know teams are looking at where they say, if we could get him in like the third round, that could be a huge win for us because, he's still rounding out his game. He's still kind of a raw kid on the other side of the puck. Needs to get bigger and stronger, but that's why the NCAA path makes so much sense for him. But there's a lot of sort of fun potential in Sasha Talagan. So that's one sleeper I'm looking at that could be very exciting.
People can check out your great work on thehockeynews.com. One of your articles touches on a huge name on the trade market that's developed over the past little while, but touch on the Vladimir Tarasenko situation in St. Louis. Will he or won't he get moved, and where do you think might be a solid destination for him?
Well, I think he will get moved. It feels like that relationship with the Blues is fractured based on the way that they handled his multiple shoulder surgeries and the fact that it was, a Blues doctor that was involved in the first two. And when he did a third one independently, they found some things that didn't get cleared up the first two times. It's going to be interesting because, I think I saw today on Twitter that Boston's out. There's only going to be so many suitors because there's risk. You got that big contract. And then you've got a guy that has not been healthy. And we all know Tarasenko for that wicked release on his shot. I mean, how's that going to be impacted by these shoulder surgeries? It's tough, but he is a competitor. Part of me wonders, the New York Rangers are a pretty good fit because they do have the cap space and, they're on their way up. And, the benefit they have is they still have guys on entry-level contracts that are going to be nice contributors for them. So that kind of helps with the cap situation. So, I would be surprised if ultimately the Rangers ended up being the sort of winners of the Tarasenko sweepstakes. But, the Los Angeles Kings are a team to watch as well because I think they look at how weak that Pacific Division is going to be next season and say, we could get back in it. We could get back in the postseason while, Kopitar and Doughty are still around, and we've got all these great young kids coming up like Byfield and Kaliyev and Turcotte. So I kind of wonder if the Kings would look at Tarasenko and say, hey, if we can make the money work here, let's give it a shot. Why not?
You threw up the draft preview that you've got with the Hockey News. Is there anything else in the near future that you're working on that hockey fans should check out?
Well, we do have the Champions issue. Obviously, you have the Tampa Bay Lightning on the cover, Steven Stamkos. That just went to print. It'll be out next week. So, fans can look for that. Champions issue, we cover not only the NHL, covered basically every league that had a championship this year, and just sort of stories from the ones that didn't. So that's pretty exciting. and I don't have it physically yet, but yeah, that'll be the next one out. And then, of course, now we're starting to work on the big summer projects like yearbook and pool book. So those will be rolling out in a few months.
Beauty. Well, hey, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today, Ryan. And I'll tell you what, in honor of your post-Wingate workout, I too will consume 3,000 calories for supper, okay?
Sounds good.
Awesome. Ryan Kennedy of the Hockey News, senior writer and draft expert. You know, I hadn't even thought of that, Remo, but how cool would that be? I mean, I know the Jets are a little stacked, or maybe, I don't know if stacked is the right word, but they've got their defensive prospect pool somewhat set. But Carson Lambos, the Winnipeg boy, to come here in the draft, that would be a hell of a get. So we'll see if they're able to pull that one off. But there'll be a ton of options for the Jets with the number 18th pick overall.
Sorry, I'm trying to unmute myself. It's the button stuck. But one thing the Jets haven't had since returning, I mean, they tried to go with Eric Fair, Derek Meach. They need a superstar or a player who gets significant minutes, plays a significant role, player from Winnipeg in the lineup. I mean, I don't think they need one, but I think it would be pretty damn cool. I mean, the Bombers have Andrew Harris. There's so many Winnipeggers in the NHL. And, they haven't been able to draft some of them, or haven't been able to acquire them or sign them. But I think that would be great to see. So if, he did fall to the Jets, maybe they would, they probably know more about him than any other player just because of proximity. But
I'm down if they scoop him up. I'm down with a couple other Winnipeggers potentially stopping by too with, Travis Zajac and Darren Helm. Darren Helm's from St. Andrews, but those are a couple guys that I've known since my childhood, and they're a couple of beauties as well. So maybe they're in the offering. But you got something? Is there some breaking news, Remo?
Is there? I don't know. I
thought you were throwing something to me there. It's all good though.
I saw someone tweeting about talking about Louis Oosthuizen, but no. Nothing. I don't see anything breaking right now. I do have all the alerts from I got 5 apps giving me alerts, like Ryan Graves yesterday getting traded. Like I got the Score app, TSN app, the Athletic app, the NHL app, all telling me, hey, this guy got traded. So I'm on top of it, but no, nothing. Well, we thought maybe we'd see something today, leading up.
Man,
but
GMs suck. GMs suck. We were told this was going to be the most explosive summer ever. And right now, Ryan Graves, as far as trades go, highlights the water point, the pinnacle of movement so far. So I've been pretty disappointed, but I guess there is still a decent amount of time left to go. You mentioned Louis Oosthuizen there, Remo. The second round at the Open Championship is now done at Royal St. George, and Louis holds the lead at 11 under par, 5 under round for him today. Yeah, so Louis Oosthuizen, It's almost turning into a 3-horse race, it looks like. Louis has the lead. He's in first at 11 under. 2 back is Colin Morikawa with the second round of the day, a 6 under. And then Jordan Spieth kind of lurking in the weeds there. He's at 8 under. Then you've got a boatload of people at 7 and 6 under. Mac Hughes is at 5 under. So, only 6 back. He's still kind of in it there. And then Corey Connors down there at 4 under, not too far off the pace.
The cut's at after +1. So if you're 2 over and below, or is it above? I have no idea what these.
Yeah. If you're at 1 over, you're okay. And
2 over.
Those at 1 over is your boy Bryson. Bryson's going to play.
It's not my boy.
No,
is he anyone's boy right now, Bryson?
So we can maybe talk about this after Scott Cullen joins us, but Bryson. Is there a more unlikable person in sports right now?
I was going to say the only person that I thought of is I want to say Conor McGregor, but people actually like Conor McGregor. I don't like him, but he has fans. He's going to sell out pay-per-views. Bryson doesn't seem like fans. I don't know. Did you see him? Was yesterday saying his driver sucked and his sponsor was a Cobra.
Yeah,
to put out a response.
The Cobra rep he sounds like an absolute beauty. To go after Bryson like that's my guy. That might be my favorite guy in golf right now, the Cobra Tour rep. But man, I hate athletes that don't take responsibility for when they screw up. It's maybe the most unendearing thing that you can do. And whether or not there was some kind of technological issue with the driver, I mean, they go out of their way to make the most unique club in golf by the sounds of it. So you might be right. I don't know if there's anybody that is pro Bryson right now. And then Koepka, Brooksy had to, of course, take a shot at him after his round today. I don't know if you saw that, but saying that he loves his driver. It's good to go. So the chase for 40 mil between those two continues. But at the very least, I'm sure the PGA is happy that Bryson is going to be around for the weekend. And, who knows, maybe he finds how to use the lawn stick and maybe gets back into the race for Sunday.
Yeah, you did put out a call in chat saying most hated athlete out there. I think Trini put one in that I think was acceptable. Corey Perry is up there. And Corey Perry's a guy when he's not on your team, you don't like him. Everything he does annoys you. But when he's on your team, and I know maybe people did hop on the Montreal bandwagon during the playoffs as Canada's team, right? Canada's team, of course.
Oh, shut up.
And if you buy that, and you're like, yeah, I love Corey Perry. Every team needs a guy like Corey Perry to mix it up. And he's a guy also becoming a UFA, and sounds like he wants to remain in Montreal, but we'll see. But switching back to hockey, the other name that's becoming out there, and people were asking about him in chat, if he would be an option for the Jets. And I think the Jets are pretty set at forward, to be honest. But Phil Deneau, breakout playoffs, everyone looking at him as defensive wizard. He's a UFA. Will he be taking the pizza to another city, or will he be sticking with Montreal style? Is that a thing, Montreal style pizza?
They got Montreal style bagels. I know that maybe that's the crust. I don't know how that works, but I don't see that as an option for the Jets. He's just too expensive, right? Like you already have Scheifele, Dubois, Lowry down the middle. I mean, maybe even Paul Stastny if he comes back for another year. It'd be nice. He's a hell of a player, but I don't know if that's going to be in the fold. When it comes to free agency, he's going to get paid. Philip Deneau. Have you heard some of the rumors around Zach Hyman's deal?
Okay, I saw Andy Strickland of FS Midwest, or I guess it's not FS. I think they switched it to Bally. Anyway, Bally Sports. Either way, he's in St. Louis. He seems to be very plugged in on Hyman. 7 or 8 year deal. That seems like, that's what he was saying. It would be like starting at a 7 or an 8 for Zach Hyman. He's 29. He has problems staying healthy. If you're a GM, I think you gotta put the pen down and go hands up. Be like, no, thank you. But you like his game. He plays physical. But I think we've discussed here, giving anyone 7 or 8 years, unless you're an absolute superstar like Sherlock Hall of Famer, you're probably not giving anyone like that who's not that a 7 or 8 year deal. It seems like a bad move.
No, like only after your ELC is done, right? Like pay a guy through his 20s for 7 or 8 years. And even then, how often do those work out, right?
Well, Eriksson Ek, we were talking about him. I mean, he got the 8 year deal, right, from Minnesota, but he's only 24. That's taking you to 32. And I think that's a fair deal. That could work out for both sides. But Nugent Hopkins got the big deal, and he's 29. So, I mean, when you're giving guys deals at that age into their 30s, it's a risk, and I don't know if you want to be taking that. And we've seen so many deals on free agency absolutely not work out. Louis Eriksson, Andrew Ladd, David Backes.
That reminds me of
who?
I hate to say it, and it's kind of a taboo name to even discuss out there in Toronto, but is this not David Clarkson 2.0?
Oh. Zach Hyman, are you saying that? Or
yeah, well, I mean, Clarkson was coming off like a 30-some-odd goal season.
Mm-hmm.
I think Zach Hyman's a better player than David Clarkson, but you touched on it, man. Like he's had some serious injuries. Like he's one more knee injury away from calling it quits. So I saw 6x6 and I was like, holy moly! Like I don't know how any team could justify that one potentially working out for them. But if you're talking 7 years, that's just, you would think GMs would learn by now not to commit that much term, but they just make the same mistakes over and over again. I thought Zach Hyman might be a nice fit here in Winnipeg, actually, just as far as a compliment to the high skill guys that they have. But I was thinking that at like 3 or 4 years and $4 million. But when we're talking 6 or 7, sayonara, I'm out on that. Scott Cullen is, I believe, in the green room. He's ready to go here in just a second. So we'll keep the hockey talk going here. But before we get to Scott, want to mention Not Autocore. Shout out to them. Why not get into the vehicle of your dreams at a great price with the help of the Not team? A wide selection of cars, including many Teslas. And if you're already in a lease or a vehicle, they'll help you get max value for that with your current ride with their successful consignment program. I don't know what that means, but I'm sure it helps you out. Pop in and see them at Waverly and McGillivray, or check them out online today at not.ca. I also want to give some love to our friends at Little Brown Jug. Enjoy some cold 1919s. I've actually got one ready to go here for after the show, or maybe after Scott joins us, I might crack this one open in celebration. Grab one of those or the new LBJ Summer Lager with friends on the patio at the LBJ Tap Room at 336 William Avenue. Or you can actually, if you're lazy like me, get it delivered to your home by ordering online at littlebrownjug.ca. It's never been easier to get the great taste of Little Brown Jug. And also, check out their events page on the website so you can check out where they're at in the community throughout the week. One last shout out to Breezy Bend Country Club. If you want to head out to the links in honor of the Open Championship getting underway, Breezy Bend has a great junior program, ladies and men's night, social events as well. Breezy Bend is the spot for you and your family to get the most out of the golf season. So get on the waiting list for next year, and you can find out more at breezybend.ca. Super Jack to bring on our next guest now, contributor to The Athletic and McKeen's Hockey, fantasy expert, hockey, baseball, basketball, all the sports. He's there to help you out and win you some money as well. But Scott Cullen is here to join us right now. Scott, how's it going today, man?
I'm great. How are we doing today?
We're doing pretty good. You know, the one thing I'll say here in Winnipeg, I don't know if you want to dive into this because I feel like the city's getting torn apart here on this debate. Even me and my wife are going at it. She won't even talk to me about this anymore. But do you want to wade into DeMelo versus Stanley? That seems to be the thing everyone's talking about right now. I think I know where you're leaning, but I'd love to hear your take on this.
Sure. I mean, it's obvious. The analytics guy is going to say take Dylan DeMelo and keep him. Here's I understand where the thinking goes on Logan Stanley, because in some ways, like, he got drafted too high. I think there was a lot of people at the time who were saying, no, that's going to be a problem. Well, and so the fact that he's turned out to be an NHL player, and that does seem like his future is that he's actually going to have an NHL career. So he's maybe, surpassed some of those expectations in the first place that the critics were saying, well, no, he's not even going to make it. Well, so it does appear that he's going to make it, and you've got a big body on defense, and teams love their big defensemen. And so, I mean, I get where the Jets are coming from in the thought that, oh yes, we want to protect Logan Stanley. He's going to be a part of our future. And I get it, except he's not as good as Dylan DeMelo. And I think that, it would be much easier for you to replace Logan Stanley. If you're the position that the Jets are right now, I have to presume that you're playing to compete and try and win, with this core that you have. It would make no sense to try and, build for the future when you've got Scheifele and Ehlers and Wheeler and Connor and that core of forwards. Like, you're playing to win now with that group. And if you're playing to win now with that group, it makes a lot more sense to have Dylan DeMelo, a guy who can play legit top 4 minutes and be reasonably effective in those top 4 minutes, than keeping Logan Stanley. It's just, I understand why teams get this way, especially with homegrown guys. There's like an organizational investment, right? That when you've scouted this guy and you've drafted this guy and you're really committed to it, and then, he's okay. He looks like he's an NHL player, but we know Dylan DeMelo is better than that. And if you're trying to win now, I think it makes more sense to keep DeMelo.
All right, so everybody in the chat.
And by the way, and they probably won't. So
Scott Cullen said it. Stanley sucks. DeMelo's great. You can leave me and Remo alone for a little bit and go after Scott. Now the interesting thing, and this is what me and Michael Remis were talking about earlier, and I've said this for a while. I think Seattle ends up taking Mason Appleton regardless. Like, we have this debate all the time about who to keep on the blue line, but I think they go Appleton either way. I mean, I know you would lean towards Appleton if it was between Appleton and Stanley. But if it was between Mason Appleton and Dylan DeMelo, and you're beside Ron Francis.
And that is the angle where if you're doing this as sort of temptation so that you get to keep Mason Appleton, I can understand if that's the angle that they're playing too, right? Is that if you decide, I mean, because I think when people have been doing their mock expansion drafts, basically from the start of the season, Mason Appleton has been the guy that everyone expects Seattle to get out of Winnipeg. But if you're Winnipeg and you're like, well, okay, we don't have the room to protect Mason Appleton, without losing another quality forward, but how can we tempt Seattle in another direction? And if you do it with Dylan DeMelo, maybe that's enough to convince them and they take DeMelo. I mean, I still think they'd probably take Appleton because he's cheaper, right? You've got a guy who's a legit top 9 forward this year on an entry level deal. You can see how that would be really appealing to an expansion team because the Seattle might look at it and say, this is a guy that we can move up the depth chart. Maybe he plays second line in Seattle next year, depending on how their expansion draft shakes out. And so there's, I guess, one angle to leaving DeMelo available is that you hope that Seattle is more intrigued by DeMelo, so that they don't take Appleton. And then, I mean, here's the other part of it is if you're taking DeMelo as Seattle, maybe you're not even taking DeMelo to keep him. Like Seattle is probably going to draft 12 defensemen. I mean, something like that, and then turn around and start flipping some of these defensemen to get more long-term assets. I mean, that's that is the best place for them to find value in an expansion draft is you get these defensemen who are 4-5 type defensemen, and every team needs those guys. And you just get to pluck a bunch for free and then turn around and start flipping them for draft picks, prospects, whatever. And you still get to keep, 7 or 8 legit NHL defensemen. So I think, there's an argument to be made, I guess, that you could put Dylan DeMelo, out there for Seattle. And if it means you get to keep Mason Appleton, maybe that makes it a little more worthwhile.
There's just so many layers to this, and
and that's just with Winnipeg to try and do it for another 30 teams.
Yeah, and like our team's going to trade assets to protect. Like it just goes on and on and on. I mean, that's a good point too. Vegas did that where I don't know how many D-men they picked, but they flipped a handful of those. They took too many, but they did still grab a couple of draft picks out of moving a number of defensemen. So it won't surprise anybody to see Seattle do the same thing. I mean, Winnipeg might be one of those teams, honestly, that grabs one of those defensemen in a trade from Seattle because that's their biggest weakness right now. When you look at the Jets as a whole, I mean, it's fairly obvious, high skill up front and one of the best, if not the best goaltenders on the planet in the blue paint.
Yep.
What do you think the Jets should do when it comes to improving their blue line for this upcoming season so they can get back to the place they were back in 2018?
Well, I mean, you would say, oh yes, go out and go acquire quality top 4 defensemen as though that's an easy thing to do. Yeah. It's not. I mean, there are a couple, real difference makers that are going to be out there in free agency, but only a couple. Dougie Hamilton's going to be out there, and there's going to be a bunch of teams who are throwing massive money at him. It's not going to be easy to get Dougie Hamilton. And then, like the other guys who are out there, like Ryan Suter will help a team, but I don't imagine. I imagine he's going to go to A, probably an American team, B, probably on a short-term, 1 or 2 year deal for, at this stage of his career. And so like, I think if you're Winnipeg, it would make sense to be looking to trade for some of these guys who are left extra. Like I was online today and you saw the protected list that is expected for the Pittsburgh Penguins. And it has them protecting Mark Friedman, who's been like an extra in the NHL for a few years.
He was on waivers. The Flyers put him on waivers a couple months.
Yeah. And leaving Marcus Pettersson available, right? I mean, they're also leaving Mike Matheson available, but we understand that, people don't want to take on that contract. But in Pettersson's case, I mean, he's got 4 more years left at a little more than $4 million, but he's good. Like his defensive results have been, positive kind of like 3 years in a row. So they're to lose that for nothing, which, I mean, that's the risk here that Pittsburgh is taking, is that you could lose Marcus Pettersson for nothing just to get that salary off the books. Well, if you're a team like, Winnipeg, maybe you say to Seattle, look, if you take Marcus Pettersson, we'll be interested in getting that player from you. And then you have to work out whatever kind of trade in addition to sweeten the pot there for Seattle. But I think there should be quite a few of those deals being made. I mean, from the sounds of it, lots of GMs have been talking with Ron Francis about what they could do, related to the expansion draft, and everyone seems to be complaining about the Kraken, asking for too much. But they should. They have a bunch of teams over a barrel, and teams are sitting here trying, well, we don't know how to fix things. And you do what Minnesota does, and they buy out Suter and Parise just so they can protect Matt Dumba and Nico Sturm. And it's like, you've got a massive cap hit coming in the next few years, all to keep Matt Dumba and Nico Sturm. Like, I think, if you're Seattle, you say, yeah, we're going to drive a hard bargain. And if it means that you're going to make decisions like that, then so be it. You're cutting off your nose to spite your face a little bit there. And I think, teams that you can understand that Seattle has an advantage based on the circumstances of this. And then, you say, okay, well, you're going to be getting this defenseman, or you have access to this defenseman. How can we make a deal for that guy? And if you can line something up ahead of time, or at least, the parameters of something ahead of time, I think it gives you a decent chance to replenish your own defense. And a team like Winnipeg, and certainly, they've needed to replenish that defense. The last couple of seasons have been a little rough back there. And, it's one thing, you get bailed out by Connor Hellebuck, and sometimes that covers up the problems that are going on back there. But, imagine if you just gave Connor Hellebuck a little bit more support, and how much better things could be. I know the Jets talk about that their internal metrics don't show them being quite as outplayed as all the public metrics do. But, what if you got yourself to a point where the public metrics were saying you were even a 50-50 team? Because you would take 50-50 with a team that has great goaltending and great forwards who are going to score more than the average forward. So, that should be the objective. And I think if you're Winnipeg, really the only thing you need to focus on is, not the only thing, but your defense. Go get a couple of legit NHL defensemen who can bolster that unit. Call up Ville Heinola next year, or some guys who are going to make a difference on that back end, and hope that you give it a little bit more support there. Because I think if you look at look at a team like Colorado, who during the regular season this past year was the best team in hockey, and they did it. Yes, they had McKinnon and Rantanen, and they have all those star forwards, but I think the real difference maker for Colorado is they had all these puck moving defensemen that there just aren't other teams who could keep rolling out guys who can carry the puck down the ice. And so if you're Winnipeg, you could use one or two of those guys that can kind of get you into that game, into a game where you can play in transition and move it really fast. And given the forwards that Winnipeg has, get some defense who are going to be able to move the puck to them and make something happen. So yes, that is what I think they should do, and I'm not sure that's what's going to happen.
It's very similar to me, stepping on a scale, and the public model says that I'm overweight, but internally, my internal model says that I'm actually in shape. Yeah. At some point, you have to acknowledge that maybe outside forces have a little bit right on what's going on with the team. But when I saw that you were going to be one of our guests today, I was super excited to ask you about a specific player. And this might be a bit of a long-winded question. I'll try to keep it short. But I would consider myself, I guess, a part of the analytics community. Or at least I put a heavy amount of weight into what analytics say when it comes to hockey and specific players. But I kind of push back a little bit on the Seth Jones chatter. And it seems like he is one of the most divisive players that we've seen in a number of years now, where eye tests and hockey people are saying, hey, he's a stud. Don't worry about it. Just look at him play, right? Yeah. 6'3", skates like the wind, all that. Whereas the numbers over the past couple of seasons have said that he's not as effective on ice as he has been. I just feel like he's a guy that, 2 seasons ago, I think it was, finished 4th in Norris voting. He's got game. I don't think it's completely disappeared. I'm not going to say he hasn't had a couple of down seasons, but I just think that, as far as potential difference makers and somebody that a team could acquire, I'm still all in on Seth Jones being, a high-end top-pair defenseman moving forward. But I'm curious what you might think, knowing that the numbers over the past 2 seasons specifically have pointed to major buyer beware.
Yeah. And I think that's the issue. The year that he finished 4th for the Norris Trophy, I wrote a whole column picking him for the Norris Trophy. I thought he was so good. And at that age, at that time, I thought, well, good. We're not going to give some old defenseman kind of the career award, like they did to Drew Doughty, where they just said, oh, it's his time. We're going to name him the best defenseman this year. I was like, here you go, Seth Jones, young defenseman. kind of in his prime, make him the Norris Trophy winner, and he wasn't. But at that time, I was really high on Seth Jones, and now, so the numbers in the past couple of years have definitely thrown the buyer beware. And I would, if contracts weren't a thing, I would be totally fine with, yes, go get Seth Jones, and see if you can be, if you have a stronger environment to put him in, because Columbus's overall team in the past couple of years has been a little shaky, and so if you manage to get Seth Jones and have a strong team around him, I think there's a chance, yes, that Seth Jones could recover his game and put up some good numbers. The challenge here is that he's got 1 year left on his current contract, and whoever acquires him is looking at a massive contract after that. And I don't know that I want to be the one to bet that. I mean, that's basically what it comes down to is, do you want to bet, 7 or 8 years at, I don't know, $70 million, $60 million? Like, it's going to be something huge for Seth Jones, when you know that these past couple of years, the on-ice results haven't been great. And I'd be really wary of that, because if you sign it and it turns out that, oh yes, Seth Jones he's in decline, and all these things you see with your eye test, the fact that he's big and can skate and handle the puck and all those things, but maybe he gives up the blue line too easily, or he doesn't close out his gap quickly enough. Like, there could be all kinds of reasons why his overall results aren't what you would like them to be. And I don't want to make that bet. And that's kind of where I would be. Like, if it was just you're a contender and you want to take a shot with Seth Jones for a year, I'd have no problem, taking that shot. It's all about that next contract that I think you have to be really careful, because boy, if you sink in $60 million or something in that range for Seth Jones, and it turns out that he's probably a second pair defenseman for you, that's a problem, and I don't know how you recover from it. This is one of those things that's what bad teams do, and they end up. I mean, you look at what the San Jose Sharks are dealing with right now. Right, they have all that money tied up in Brent Burns and Erik Karlsson and Marc-Edouard Vlasic, and as recently as 2 years ago, you were like, oh well, look at all the puck moving and playmaking they're getting out of Burns and Karlsson, and Vlasic is the top defensive guy, and now you've got these 3 albatross contracts that it's really hard to build a team around that when you're spending that much money on guys who aren't making a positive difference, and that's. That's the concern, I guess, is that do you want to run the risk that you sign Seth Jones to one of those kinds of deals and then he ends up playing like that?
All great points. I would take the leap.
Yeah,
I would still do it. I would risk my job signing Seth Jones to a big deal. I always lean more towards, I guess, taking home run swings, just because acquiring elite high-end talent is just so difficult. So I mean, as a fan, I would be okay if my GM made a move like that, because at least the mindset is, what, we're trying to get somebody that's an actual difference maker, as opposed to, let's get a safe, I don't know, 30-year-old second pair defenseman that's a good player, but ultimately not really going to move the needle for us all that much.
Yeah, that's fair.
I also want to get your thoughts. It's funny because it's a name I've kind of forgotten, and it shouldn't be the case here in Winnipeg, but do you have any idea whatsoever what Patrick Laine is going to do on the ice next season? Do we know? Is he going to be 40-goal Patrick Laine, or is what we've seen over the past couple of seasons? Should we just expect at this point that he's going to be, an inconsistent, maddening 30-some-odd goal scorer that's going to be an absolute black hole defensively?
Yeah. Do I know? Absolutely not. My guess is it has to be better than it was last year, because I mean, I think he was ultimately one of the worst forwards in the league last year, and because given the ice time and his lack of production and so on. And yes, you can tie some of that to friction between him and Tortorella, and that happens. But if you're an elite talent, I mean, and this is the part that I don't think necessarily falls on Laine, is we know what he is. He's a shooter. You need somebody who can get him the puck, and that's somebody who can get the puck, through the neutral zone and into the offensive zone, where Laine is one of the few guys in the league who's a long distance scorer, right? There aren't guys who can score from the top of the circles with any kind of consistency, and Laine can. So my thought is, Columbus has a difficult offseason going, not least of which because of the Seth Jones situation. But they still need to improve their forward group and come up with something better down the middle of the ice than Jack Roslovic and Max Domi. And if a Seth Jones trade helps facilitate that and gives them another option, well, I might be more optimistic then that Line A could bounce back. And I will not be expecting 40 goals from Line A kind of until we see a better situation for him. But I could see a 30 goal season, and certainly if you're Columbus, you would be happily take a 30 goal season based on what you saw from him last year. But it's when you have a guy who has this kind of very rare skill set, that can shoot and score from distance in a way that very few others can. I think there's a real responsibility on the team to, put him in a position where he can use that. And that means, having playmakers on his line and giving him the opportunity to use kind of his great asset, which is his shot. And I don't think Columbus and, they weren't built for that. They didn't have, in some ways, if you look at they sent Alexander Wenberg. He ended up going to Florida, but a guy like Alexander Wenberg, who for the previous 3 seasons basically refused to shoot, but was passing all the time, he might have actually made sense to play with Patrick Laine, so that you end up in a game where Laine should, like, the baseline should be that Laine gets 3 shots on goal per game. You should be aiming for like 5. Right, just give him as many shots as you can, because he's a home run hitter, and ultimately you give him enough opportunities, they're going to go in. And so I think, yes, there's a whole issue about what the supporting cast is going to be for him in Columbus, but I expect it has to be better than it was this past season.
We're speaking with Scott Cullen, contributor to The Athletic and McKeen's Hockey here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Scott, I know you always have an eye when it comes to fantasy, especially fantasy hockey. Is there a name or two in free agency that you think could have major implications when it comes to drafting your fantasy team ahead of the upcoming season? Is there either a name or a team that you've got your eye on where maybe something might be in the cards that they could either blow up or, see their impact reduce in a big way next year?
Well, I'm very obviously Seattle is the team that I'm kind of find most compelling. Just because we saw what Vegas could do, that you can build a roster that is competitive right out of the gate. And like Seattle's front office is sharp. Like they've got some really smart people involved there, not just Ron Francis, but their whole analytics group there is really smart. And so I would expect that they're going to make some pretty savvy additions coming into the season. And it may include players who have not had a huge fantasy impact to this point. But if you give them opportunity, right, there's a real chance. And like we talked Mason Appleton, like if Mason Appleton ends up going to Seattle and they decide he's going to be a top 6 forward and get some power play time, Mason Appleton could have a real vault in value in terms of fantasy if that's what happens, because a guy like William Karlsson came from nowhere, and now I don't expect anybody that they take is going to be as dramatic as William Karlsson, going from 4th line checker to 43 goal scorer. I don't see that happening. But I do think there are all kinds of guys in the National Hockey League who are 5 minutes of ice time a game away from being very compelling players when it comes to fantasy. And so that's like a guy like Jared McCann in Pittsburgh. It looks like he's not going to be protected either. They have a real fascinating list of guys who are available for the Penguins. And so if Jared McCann, he had a year this year that was probably unsustainably good, like in terms of percentages were high and stuff, but his underlying numbers were also great. And he was driving play. And basically when Evgeny Malkin got hurt for the Penguins, Jared McCann stepped in as their second line center, and they didn't miss a beat. In fact, they started winning even more with McCann as their second line center. And so if he's available and Seattle gets him and he ends up in a first line role, well, maybe the percentages aren't going to be as lofty as they were this past season, but maybe he's going to play 4 or 5 minutes a game more too. And so that would really help, give him future value. So that's the team that I'm kind of most interested in to see how they construct it. And then, when we move beyond that, I think the interesting part becomes who are the guys who are going to end up playing around the stars, right? I mean, I heard you talking about Zach Hyman before I get on. Well, does he move from, Toronto? Does he end up in Edmonton where he gets to play with Connor McDavid? Well, I mean, anybody who gets to play with Connor McDavid gets, a massive bump. That's it doesn't always work, but just in terms of perception, you don't want to miss the opportunity to play to get somebody who's playing, with an all-time great like that. And so those are the ones that I'm going to be kind of most interested in, is seeing how teams fill out around their top stars.
And just one last one for you here quickly, Scott. You mentioned Hyman. Are you with am I missing something? I feel like I'm taking crazy, but I feel like Mugatu and Zoolander here. 6x6 or 7x6. It's not that he's not a good player, but my God, there has to be a limit as far as the term and the amount too. I just don't get. I don't get why NHL GMs are so eager to throw borderline all-star money at a guy in Zach Hyman, who I think is just a good complimentary piece.
Yeah, and that's Darren Dreger had that report the other day about whether it's a 7 or 8 year deal is what Hyman's expecting, and I don't fathom how you would do that for a guy who's going to be 29 years old and plays a physical game. If you look at the history of forwards who play physical game and what happens to them in their early 30s, if not sooner, the decline is pretty steep. And so, to tie yourself to Hyman until he's 37 years old it's asking for trouble. And I put out a poll on Twitter last night. I said, who's the better unrestricted free agent winger, Brandon Saad or Zach Hyman? Because I'm not hearing any talk about Brandon Saad getting a 7 or 8 year deal. And I think, it's a coin flip between those guys, and I might even prefer Saad. I mean, he's been a consistent play driver throughout his career, multiple 20-goal seasons. And he doesn't do anything on the power play either. So it's not as though his numbers have been padded by power play. So I if whoever goes out for Zach Hyman, if they go out and they give him a 7 or 8 year deal and it's over $5 million per, that's a bet that I would not want to make. I would go look for Brandon Saad and see if you can get him at for a 5 year deal at similar money, because I'm not hearing the same kind now. Maybe that's just because the Toronto thing is got a megaphone for what's going on with Zach Hyman. But if I was given the choice, I might just take Brandon Saad instead.
Yeah, or Thomas Tatar 3 weeks after free agent for a year to come, right? I think, to me, that's the bet I want to make instead of 7 years. Yeah, and Hyman's knees hold it up until then. Scott, thanks so much for joining us today. Really appreciate you taking the time. I know you write for The Athletic and McKeen's, and I think you've got 100 different podcasts you're on. Let our listeners know what you got coming up in the works soon.
Yeah, well, the summer writing, I'm doing some stuff for McKeen's as we get ready for next season, and the podcast I'm hosting Locked On Fantasy Hockey and Locked On Fantasy Baseball. That's keeping me busy. It's a fun time. So thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed this.
Oh, beauty. We'll have to have you on sometime soon, Scott. Enjoy your weekend.
For sure. Thanks, man.
Scott Cullen, contributor for The Athletic and McKeen's Hockey, as well as a number of different items. Always good to chat fantasy. And that was a great hockey talk too. And we'll have to get into that with Remo here shortly, just about the different names like a Seth Jones and some of these other big names that are available for the Winnipeg Jets to take a look at this offseason. Before we get back to Remo, though, just want to mention quickly Assiniboine Downs in action as usual throughout the summer. Live racing every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And you can bet online at hpibet.com or make a rezo in the Terrace Dining Room for an evening of live racing, which is always a ton of fun. Latest updates on reopening plans are available at asdowns.com. And Remo will make his $20 worth of picks some point before we call it quits later today. Do want to mention, too, we talked about it. Huss is gone today. He's out Monday. Matt Leiba will be taking over the seat on Monday's show. But that's because Huss is out there at Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge. So if you want to, head out to the outdoors and enjoy some fishing and camping and all that, make sure you check out Aikens Lake and Wilderness Lodge as well. Remo, Scott Cullen was on fire today, man. I guess I'll throw this at you first. Are you on the potential bring Seth Jones to Winnipeg campaign, or is that a guy you want to stay a little bit away from just because of, I guess, the assets that'll come in, the contract that he's due after that, and then I guess the fact of, is he going to be able to get back to the level that he was a couple of seasons ago?
I like Seth Jones, solid player, had a down year last year, and there were some people in chat saying or joking around that, Tortorella broke Seth Jones, broke PLD, broke Line A, and now he's not the coach anymore, and he, maybe lost his will to play a bit. I don't know about that, but what I do know is Seth Jones is a UFA after the season. He's probably looking for a big deal. He wants to hit the open market. We know free agents not exactly inclined to sign in Winnipeg, although I think maybe Winnipeg should go and try to just open the bank, open the checking account, just give a blank check to like a Dougie Hamilton, someone who's a number one, like who's a clear cut number 1D. Give him, try to outbid everyone, put in an effort. And if it doesn't work out, you say, hey, you know what? You can't go outside in the summer here. You can't go outside in the winter. I can understand why people don't like it here anymore. As we were looking, what is it going to be, like 40
seasons left, man? 40
coming up. But in all seriousness, no, I don't think if you're the Jets, you go after Seth Jones, just because unless you're going and knowing it's going to be a rental. But then maybe the asking price would probably be less. But I think someone's going to overpay, and you don't do that. Although, would you trade like a Heinola for him or something for a 1 year? Or wouldn't that be where it would start? Isn't that where it would start for if you're Columbus and you want to deal Jones?
So. I would imagine their ask would be either Heinola or Perfetti to go along with the first round pick, and then I don't know what else or if anything else would be thrown on top of that. So the ask would be exorbitant. But like, to me, if I make a deal and I'm giving up assets like that, like I'm signing him to a long-term deal. I'm not going to risk just having 1 year of Seth Jones and then maybe my best prospect get thrown out the door for, just 12 months of, even if he is back to the guy that he was a couple of seasons ago. Let me know, Remo, if what the chat's going on about here, what the hot topic seems to be. But, I have no problem going after Seth Jones, but maybe everybody's preferred number one candidate has to be Dougie Hamilton that you mentioned there, right? Because it might just cost you cap space. Plus, nobody wants to come to Winnipeg, but I would say Winnipeg's museum game, I don't know how many cities can match that. The museum game's strong here, so I don't know, maybe the Jets have a chance, but Dougie would be, I think everyone would agree that Dougie would probably be the most desirable blue liner to come in, and you just have to give up cap space to get him.
Yeah, I'll see. We know how it goes with the Jets and big free agents. Maybe they'll kick the tires, but I just remember Frank Cervalli pointing out too that they just have had a tough time. So, trade route, or maybe you signed a guy who you give him an elevated role that he's seen, like a guy, Jamie Alexiak, and you can say, hey, you're going to be, a second pair D or something, and you can play with, take over the forward role. You can play with Pionk, and you have Morrissey, DeMelo, number one. That actually looks, not bad. He's a guy at a more manageable salary, but I think we do agree that they need to find, like a top dog there on D, someone who they can run the power play and, play in all situations, and you can put out there when the game's on the line. They haven't had that since like a Bufflin here. So I know Bufflin comes up like every day in the chat, but he's obviously a beloved player, unique player, and people definitely miss seeing what he could do. So I can see why he comes up, but they do need a guy who's the horse, who can play that many minutes. Like, is Pionk going to be that guy? Is he going to develop? Because he's also an RFA too. You do need to commit some dollars to him. But they definitely need to, I think, bring in like at least 2D, and then maybe trust, throw one of your young guys in if it's Stanley, Heinola, or Sandberg. But I still don't think you can go in expecting to play these three guys. I think you maybe look to deal one of them and try to bring someone in who can help. I don't know. I don't know where you stand on that.
I've told you this before, that I think if I had to put money on a new player joining the Jets this year, I would put money on Jamie Alexiak. Mm-hmm. We just heard so many whispers going back to the trade deadline. And, for those that don't know, speaking of Frank Cervalli, he said that the ask at the deadline was a first-round pick from Dallas for Jamie Alexiak. So that's why I think Chevy balked at making that move. And I think we would all agree that was, the right thing to do at the time. But I do anticipate, I think Jamie Alexiak is going to be the guy playing beside Neil Pionk. And I like it. I think that's a great fit. The only problem I have with that is Alexiak, Pionk, and Morrissey, DeMelo good enough? Is that like a good enough top four to go up against a Colorado or a Tampa Bay or whoever it may be? That's my only concern, is that you just have, a solid, okay defense. It's not really Jamie Alexiak's fault there, but that would be my only concern about bringing him in and then still having Morrissey, DeMelo together. It's just that he's a good player, but I think the Jets need to try to find that great player, and then everybody, slots in pretty nicely after that. But I don't know. I just don't know how viable that's going to be for the Jets. I actually like Matt Dumba too as a potential fit beside Josh Morrissey, but the old Suda Parise buyouts might have put the kibosh on that one. It looks like Dumba's there to stay in Minnesota, but there's a couple other options out there. We'll see if Chevy gets anything done. Mentioned too earlier, the Open Championship second round is wrapped up there. Louis Oosthuizen is up at the top of the leaderboard, 11 under. Colin Morikawa 2 back at 9 under. And then Jordan Spieth in third at 8 under. As far as the Canadians on the leaderboard, Mackenzie Hughes, another solid day. He's in just outside the top 10, but at 5 under par, just 6 back. And then Corey Connors, 4 under par. He's 7 shots back of Louis Oosthuizen. Remo, is the DeMelo Stanley debate started to die down on the chat? Has the everybody listening moved on to a different target so far, or are people still fired up?
I joked around on Twitter. I don't know if people knew that I was joking. I was like, we're going to spend 2 hours talking about DeMelo versus Stanley. That seems to be the hot topic here. We spent a bit on it. I did put a poll, and now I said Pierre-Luc Dubois because he came up. How confident are you that he can bounce back? And it's like, well, what does bounce back mean? Because he was basically, he's got moved down to the fourth line last year. I think you traded for him to be a second line center. Like, do you think he can bounce back to be what he was in Columbus? And can he be that second line guy for the Jets? Most people in chat, as much as there was a lot of, hate or, unhappiness with his play in Winnipeg. I'm trying to bring up the poll, but I think it was like 70% of people are like, yeah, I think this guy can bounce back. And again, I think 75% and 24% among 66 voters. So a lot of people do think, Pierre-Luc Dubois can come back. I thought the way he spoke, he knew that he could have been better. I think the whole season, again, tough going through the quarantine and the not seeing anyone.
Yeah.
So I think he will be able to be, and maybe he will even surprise some people. Would I take him, high in a fantasy draft? I'm not so sure, but he maybe could be a pick near the end where you're like, you know what, I'm taking a shot on this guy. I think he could be Val.
Yeah, no, I expected to have a big year. The one thing too, more so than anything else, is just that the dude's in a contract year. So
there you go.
I don't think effort's going to be an issue. I think we see a big year from Pierre-Luc Dubois. In an ideal world, we see him, let's be honest, we see him push Mark Scheifele to maybe grab that number one center spot, right? Considering the end of the season that Mark Scheifele had. But a good year for PLD is, something as simple as, I think, 60 points. I think he's more than capable of doing that, even without getting first line power play minutes. So it's not like the ask is that extravagant for Pierre-Luc Dubois this year. He's going to be playing with either, I imagine, Nikolai Ehlers or Kyle Connor as one of his wingers. So he's going to have a ton of talent with him. I think we are going to see a big year out of Pierre-Luc Dubois, which is, hey, it's why the Jets acquired him. And I'll tell you what, if I had to bet on either Dubois or Laine having a bounce back season, I think all of us would probably put our chips towards Pierre-Luc Dubois, because I honestly have no idea what the hell to expect from Patrick Laine next year. It's pretty crazy. Scott Cullen touched on it, but like 2 of his last 3 seasons, he's arguably been one of the worst forwards in hockey. And it's like his talent level is so insane that it's just one of the more confounding cases, I guess, of a player not reaching their potential, because he was earmarked for 50 goals right after his second season. And now I don't know how you can be confident whatsoever that you're going to get a legitimate contributor for your team wherever he plays next season.
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess you have to wait and see. He is an RFA. Columbus, their depth at center, they're not really that talented of a team. We'll have to see, how obviously they got 3 first-round picks too, so we'll see what they do with that. But we talked about this yesterday with Hustler. Laine going to Finland and, trashing Tortorella, saying, they didn't use him properly and he was upset. I mean, one thing, I'm okay. I agree with him that they didn't, but I don't really see any accountability from Laine in these statements. Which
are you saying he's Patrick DeChambeau now?
I mean, he's coming kind of coming off that way. I think he's a great player, but he come back and he's just saying, he's blaming the coaching staff. He's blaming Brian Little a couple years ago. It seems like he just wants to stand at the top of the circle and smash one tees, which he can do better than anyone in the league. But there isn't. I'm not hearing him say, I need to work to get better. And I think he's done this now twice in a row. I said this yesterday. And I think part of him is correct, where maybe that, you do need to let him do his thing. You can't just put him in a box and say, you become this. But there seems to be no willingness. Like, maybe you just, he's like a Phil Kessel type. You just need to, trade him to the Penguins and have him play with Crosby and let Crosby, give him the puck and he scores 40. I don't know. I mean, he's just not meant to be a guy to carry a bad team because he can't carry a team. He's just, he'll never be like the top play driver. He's just kind of along for the ride and smashing one tees on the power play.
And the funny, my brother actually mentioned this to me, but Brad Larson, who's the coach now in Columbus, that was the assistant coach that Laine got into with it on the bench, remember? So, I mean, he hates Torts. He apparently doesn't get along with Brad Larson all that well either. You can add Paul Maurice to the list. And even going back to Finland, he had some trouble as a junior with one of the coaches there. Yeah, at some point, I think you got to look in the mirror a little bit, Patrick. And you know what? Maybe some of this is on me. I would love to see him, though, maybe just to silence this debate once and for all. Put him beside a number one center that's a playmaker, and let's find out what he is. Just to end this debate once and for all. I don't know if we see that happen in Columbus, but maybe he gets dealt again. Maybe Jarmo Kekalainen is just sick of the experiment and wants to get some assets back that he can use right now. But we just haven't heard a lot about him this offseason. And I wonder how that whole situation plays out. I mean, the other thing too is if anybody could have complained about being misused these past couple of seasons and specifically on the Winnipeg Jets, Nick Ehlers had the best case out of anyone. And we didn't hear a peep from him whatsoever. And maybe that changes if he's not on the first line this upcoming season. But Nick Ehlers, for the most part, put his head down. And he just let his play do the talking. And this past year was his best season yet.
I actually agree with that. And it's funny, you hear Ehlers the last couple of years. It's like, Nick, what did you do this summer? I watched every game I had. I watched every shift, and I tried to become a better player. And he has no incentive to become better. He's got $6 million AAV, $6 million a year for the next 4 seasons. So, but all you hear is I'm trying to become better. I'm watching every shift. I'm trying to do, and he took a huge step forward. And unfortunately, this year, didn't get rewarded for it in the playing time. Still didn't get first line power play. Didn't really get top line minutes, but it was pretty clear he was the most productive forward. And they struggled with him out of the lineup. He came back in against the series versus Edmonton immediately. Didn't he score the winner in that game, if I recall? So I agree. I mean, if they want to take a step forward, they need to give him more ice time. Put him with Scheifele. I mean, look at the. Heading into the free agency, off-season period, really starts now that the protected lists are in tomorrow at, I think, 4 Central. Monday, they get announced. Wednesday's the draft, and Seattle does have an exclusive window to negotiate with UFAs. But I think the Jets, look at the Jets for forwards in the top portion. I think they're pretty set, Brandon. Maybe there's one more, because you have Scheifele, Wheeler, Connor. I guess you need to replace Stastny. Scheifele, Wheeler, Connor, and then, Dubois, Ehlers, just using those guys as places. Those are your top 5. You do need one more, top 6, because you do have Kopp. Does Kopp slide in there? Is he getting re-signed? Paul Stastny, is he getting re-signed, or are you moving on from him? And or using the Stastny money to sign Kopp and then bumping someone else up? And are you losing Appleton? And then I think you can kind of figure out your bottom 6. Matthew Perreault, he's a UFA. He might be on.
He's gone.
You think he's gone?
They gave him the least glowing recommendation possible at the presser with Chevy and Paul Maurice. So I think that ship is sailed.
He also didn't speak at the end of the season, and I thought, I kind of want to hear from Perreault what he thought. He was here for a long time. He was one of the big free agent signings, and then he re-upped. And
He did the Toby. He just said, "No, I'm done."
He said, yeah, he did the Toby. Yeah, he just got out of there. And it's too bad because he had a great season. And I know he was on the fourth line, but he was very productive, stayed healthy. And so I think he could be, but he's not made like $4 million last year. He'd probably make like one or maybe two on like a 1 or 2 year deal. I'm curious what he's going to get. But you got Thompson and Lewis. I'm not sure if they're coming back, but it's like, and then who's in the lineup? Harkins. He's under contract. Tornado, they just signed. He's got a 2-way deal. David Gustafson, does he get a shot? So there actually is some room for Jets in the middle 6 forwards. Probably more so third line. Maybe can play the second line, but there is some room. But it's funny. I hadn't really thought too much about the forward group. But what are they gonna do with Stastny? Does he resign in Winnipeg?
Well, hey, I've anointed myself as the unofficial president of the Paul Stastny fan club. So, like, I want him back in Winnipeg. I think every team could use a guy like Paul Stastny. Mm-hmm. And he's still got game, too. Like, it's not just, you're not paying him for what he did in Colorado and in Vegas. Like, he played really well for the Jets last year, and he's a guy that can play down the middle or on the wing. I mean, isn't he a great fit if your second line was, I don't know, Dubois, whether it's Dubois, Ehlers, or Connor, but let's just say Dubois, Ehlers, and Stastny. To me, that's a really, really good second line. And then you can find some pieces to plug and play in the bottom 6. So I definitely go out of my way to make sure Paul Stastny returns. Plus, I can't imagine it's more than a 1-year deal. It's just that, would he want to go to, I don't know, say a Colorado, for example, maybe a team with a better shot to win the Cup? That's the biggest question mark for me. But I think we see the Jets take a serious run at him. But I would probably put it at 50-50 whether or not he returns next season. If he does leave, though, then like all of a sudden you have a couple of holes you got to fill if you're the Jets. And then that's not even to bring into account the Copp and Appleton situation.
Yeah, and I think, let's say you're looking for a fourth line. Let's say you start with Gustafson and Harkins on your fourth line. And we didn't mention Christian Vesalainen, and he's in the last year of his ELC. I think it's kind of like sink or swim for him. Like, where does he fit? He looked good at times in the lineup, so, you give him a look. But the other big question, is this guy the third line center, Cole Perfetti? He's got to go to we haven't even touched on him. He's got to go AHL or NHL. He's 19. He can't go to the AHL. I mean, he was, by the end of his AHL, he started off slow, but by the end, he was Rookie of the Month. He went to the World Championships. I mean, I don't think there's a benefit at this point putting him in the OHL. I think you're kind of stuck, and you got to put him in, like, let him go third line center. Let him play, like, second power play. Ease him in there. I think, is Lowry your third, or is Lowry your third or second center?
Yeah,
maybe Perfetti's like wing.
He might start off at the wing. And I mean, Paul Maurice is usually pretty conservative with guys like I imagine he starts him off at the wing and then he kind of ease him in at center either later in the season or next year. But I mean, I know that chat's going to light up for the Cole Perfetti as a Winnipeg Jet chatter, right? Like every Jets fan wants to see Cole Perfetti make the team next year. Yeah. I mean, personally, I leave a spot open for him. And whether it's him or a Harkins or a youngster or maybe a free agent, like I there's a part of me that really wants to leave a spot in the top 6 open and say, hey, you know what? You have a pro season under your belt, kid. Show us what you got early on. And we saw Cole Caulfield. Cole Caulfield at times was maybe the most impactful forward for Montreal, especially offensively, during the latter part of their Stanley Cup run. Like, it's just these kids come in, they're just different than they are in the past. Like, they're ready to go even if they're undersized. So I have no problem. If the Jets want to leave a spot open for a Perfetti or, whichever one of their young prospects to play a significant role, I'm down with that. And then if you need to fill it, you have the trade deadline to do that. So
here's your forwards. You go, Ehlers, let's just say Scheifele, Connor, Wheeler is your top, and then Ehlers, Dubois, Copp or Perfetti. And then you put your third line, Lowry, Vesalainen, and Copp or Perfetti. And then your fourth line's like Harkins, Gustafson, Tornado. Like, the Jets seem to be, assuming they just lose one, that's assuming they lose Appleton. They actually do seem to be pretty set. And I see BA Split writing in chat, Perfetti is not ready, in all capitals. what are you going to do with him? Put him in the OHL? You don't have a choice. He's going to be in the NHL. You saw Cole Caulfield. You might as well give him, his 9 games to see. And if you pick someone up, but you got to give him a shot because you have no options with him.
Yeah, I mean, he might not be ready.
He might, but you put.
I don't know. Like none of us know.
Yeah.
None of us know if he's ready or not. I mean, in all reality, he's probably leaning more towards needing a bit of seasoning before making a huge impact. But that's why I said, like, leave a spot for him, and then maybe he is ready to go right out of the gate. And on top of him, being able to contribute, he's making just, what would it be, like $900K, a mil against the cap, gives you the opportunity as well to pay a bunch of money to a bunch of guys to help solidify the blue line.
And you need guys on entry-level deals making $900,000 if you want to have a solid team. It lets you pay the top guys, get you add some top guys in. So, I mean, I really do think, after going through this, the Jets forwards heading into this upcoming week seem to be very set. Maybe they make one. I guess Stasny would be the one UFA, that maybe they try to bring back. But it's really on defense where you do need to bring in a couple guys. You need some help. And you were telling me before the start we went on how the Central Division used to be this big powerhouse division. And now with 32 teams, Arizona moving over, Central Division, I mean, the West is very weak compared to
you should just say it. The Central kind of sucks. And so does the West, right?
Yeah, the whole West. I mean, Pacific Division, we were saying last year that the Central was like the worst division in hockey. Well, I mean, look at the Pacific. You got all the California teams and Arizona. That was last year. So, Vegas and Colorado just beat up on those guys. But this year, you have Seattle coming in there with all the California teams. That's 3. And then you have Vancouver. I don't think
Edmonton.
they're going to Edmonton. So I think, the Central, I think that Pacific's the worst. The Central, though, I mean, you have Minnesota, kind of a question mark. They were very good last year, but what's their roster going to look like now that they bought those 2 guys out, and who are they losing? And then Arizona, not very good. Nashville's
Arizona's the worst team in the league next year.
Yeah, Nashville's rebuilding. Are they? Wait, is Nashville what is Nashville now? They're kind of coming down.
That's the thing. That's the thing with all the teams outside of Colorado is everyone agrees they're number 1. They're probably going to cruise to a division title next year.
Yeah.
Arizona's going to be awful. We all know that. All the other teams, though, it's like you're right. Like, what are they? Nashville is kind of in between right now.
Yeah.
I mean, their decor is solid as always, but they might be moving one of Ellis or Ekholm, and then they're trying to move one of Johansson or Duchesne right now, seeing if Seattle will take the bite on that. But even then, Nashville, I don't think Nashville scares anyone, even though they're a solid team. St. Louis they're just not the same team that won the Stanley Cup 2 years ago. Minnesota, you're right. Minnesota could be maybe a dark horse to be a really, really competitive team, but they have a number of different additions they need to make. I think, and then Chicago's the other one. I don't know if Chicago's there just yet. With their young guys, they might be another season away from maybe putting a big scare into a lot of teams. But I don't know, man. This looks like a really, really good opportunity for the Jets to make some noise this year, right? I mean, not challenge Colorado for the division, but to me, if the Jets just make some solid moves and improve the blue line, I think second spot is right there for the taking. And hey, you get home ice in the first round. You don't know what happens in round 2, even if Colorado's waiting. Maybe they get injured again. I mean, they've kind of got this mental block, not being able to get past the second round a couple seasons in a row. It does set up nicely here for the Jets who want to win now, who want to contend, that, hey, they got a bit lucky with the draw here, that the Central Division is probably an easier route for them this time around than the Canadian Division was this past year.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know if it was that much easier, but Mitch says we're underrating the Central, but I'm not so sure. I see Colorado, and then I see everyone else, and it'll be like, it's like flip a coin, roll dice. How are these teams going to land? And obviously we don't know what moves. There's going to be a lot of moves to be made. But as of now, I mean, I see it being competitive, but I don't see any of these teams being, head and shoulders above the rest other than Colorado. So I think there's a bit of a mishmash. And that's kind of like what it was last year in the Central or in the Canadian Division, where it was okay. What's going to happen here? Who has any idea? I mean, Edmonton, Calgary, Vancouver had a good year 2 years ago. Toronto, I think people had Toronto here, and then after that, it was all right. What's going to happen? And the Jets had second wrapped up for a while, but then they totally tanked in that second half.
Did they?
Yeah. Do you remember that losing streak?
The old 7-game losing streak. Yeah, that was not the best harbinger going into the postseason. We're almost ready to call it quits here. My laptop is about to call it quits too.
You're not plugged in?
No, because
Dude.
I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this or not, but
you can swear. We allowed swearing. We're on YouTube. There's no rules. Okay. You do whatever you want.
I'll just throw a goddamn apple here, but their chargers and everything are like 2 feet in length. So I'm too far away from the outlet to actually plug it in. I'll get through the next couple of minutes here. We're good, but I have no time for Apple and their god awful chargers. So
you gotta get a cord, man. You don't have a cord, extension cord?
I don't have time for extension cords.
What? I got so many here. I could have set this up. Next time. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I guess we're gonna talk about the weekend. Are you pumped for the release of Space Jam, the new Space Jam? I was
gonna ask you that because you were talking to me about Space Jam earlier. What's the Rotten Tomatoes score again?
Yeah, I always look at Rotten Tomatoes, and some movie executives will say, Rotten Tomatoes, it's ruining movies. People just look at the tomato score, and then they don't see it if it's under 50%. They got that big splat. But Space Jam, LeBron James, Don Cheadle, I know Zendaya is Lola Bunny, big fan of the show. What's that show? The kids, they party and do drugs. Oh, Euphoria. Great show on HBO. Have you seen it?
No.
It's so good. It's about kids, and they're just like doing you've seen like high school shows. This is like high school shows to the next level in terms of like the partying and the drug use and all that. But Space Jam 35% on the tomato meter, but the audience score is 67. It's not stopping me. I'm going to check this out. I want to see LeBron James hoop it up against, I don't know if it's the Monstars. I think it's the Toon Squad versus the Goon Squad. I don't want to give any spoilers here for Space Jam, but it is. But I did see some real ballers are in the movie.
Dave Lillard is one of the guys, right? I know him. There's a few other all-stars for sure. I was thinking about this because you and me were basically the same age, if not the same age. Yeah. And like we grew up with the OG Space Jam with Michael Jordan. And I think a lot of people like in our age are just going to hate the new one just because it's not the old one. You know what I mean?
Yes, yes.
It's different, so people are going to automatically hate it. But as much as I love the old Space Jam, like it really wasn't a good movie. You know what I mean? Like
what?
I enjoy it and I'll watch it anytime it's on. But like objectively, it's not a great movie, right? Like the premise is ridiculous and all that. So I feel like people are gonna hate on the new Space Jam just because I guess it goes the same way people hate on LeBron just because he's going after Michael Jordan and all that. But again, the movie's not designed for us, right? Like it's designed for the new generation of kids, so they have a Space Jam that they come up with.
Yeah, I think my one of my friends who has a son who's around 5 said he tried to show the original Space Jam to his son, and it didn't go over. Maybe it's too dated and stuff, and you don't know, you're not familiar with Michael Jordan. I think people know LeBron. Some of the players in it: Anthony Davis, Dame Lillard, Klay Thompson, and they got a couple. I think Diana Taurasi's in there.
Oh, nice.
So they have some female ballers as well. So I'm gonna tune in. I'm gonna watch it. I will make my wife watch it with me. So I'm okay to sit there and watch a movie that I don't have to see Academy Award winning movie every time I watch a movie. I did watch the other day on Netflix, Good on Paper. Have you heard of this one? Eliza Schlesinger. No. She's a stand-up comedian.
Okay, yeah.
Wasn't great, but we didn't try. We're like, okay, we'll watch a bit of it, and you do this on Netflix. Yeah, we'll start it, and then we'll stop halfway. We'll finish it tomorrow. We ended up finishing the whole thing. So how bad could it have been? But I did get entertainment out of that one. But it wasn't like I don't think it was amazing. But you think you're gonna be able to shut these movies off, and you can. That's why TV, it gives you a good starting point. You don't have to create one on your own. And I'm more of a TV guy than a movie guy.
Yeah. If we're doing Netflix recommendations, I watched this yesterday.
Yeah.
But Heist. It's I guess
Is that Ben
it's a
Stiller?
series.
Oh, it's a series.
It's like I don't know, a documentary, I guess.
Oh.
But it details 3 of the biggest heists of all time. So it's like real life stories. One of them, a 21-year-old girl and her boyfriend robbed a Brinks truck in Vegas for like $5 million or something like that. And it just like it details how they get into how the heists were planned out and stuff like that. So heist movies are always my jam. I'm always down for something like that. So
Sorry.
if you like that, sorry, go ahead.
I was getting it confused with the movie Tower Heist.
Oh God.
Isn't that with Ben Stiller and Eddie Murphy?
Yeah,
I thought he was saying Tower Heist, not the same.
That's got to be a 36 on Rotten Tomatoes.
I think I had it on for like 15 minutes and then shut that one off.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, I think I'll watch Space Jam 2. I don't have super high hopes for it, but I feel like if you're around our age, you got to give it a shot, right?
Yeah, of course. I'm so in. I mean, I watched the the Friends reunion a couple weeks ago, so I'm here for 90s reboots. Yeah, Friends, that was an Insta watch, so I'll be on Space Jam. I'll see if I can win. That's what I'm suggesting. And people are saying, isn't it a kids movie? Yes, it's a kids movie, of course, but it's Looney Tunes, Bugs Bunny, all the fun stuff. So I am looking forward to watching it though.
Beauty. Well, I mean, other than that, Remo, is that just the big plans for the weekend for you and the wife? I mean, it's perfect too because we basically have to stay indoors to avoid 100+ degree weather outside. But is there anything else on tap other than Space Jam 2?
Yeah, welcome to Winnipeg. You can't go outside in the winter or in the summer now. 35 high tomorrow and Sunday. That's hot. So I don't know. Like if it's what's it going to be in the morning? Like I'd like to get in the morning. 25 to 27. I could get out to the zoo at some point. I want to see the dinosaur thing again. I went with my son. He's 2. Loves dinosaurs. Loves it. So I'd love to do that at some point, and I'd maybe have some gatherings because they're changing the rules. You pumped? You got people coming inside your house or what? No, I don't want anybody inside my house. That might be more mess related than COVID related because I mean my little one's 7 months now.
Yeah, so it's like it's survival every day. Every minute of every day is just pure survival. So I don't think I want anybody to see inside. My plan is to head to the beer can.
There you go.
I got to mention quickly here, but on my podcast, Skates in Place, today's episode, Good Neighbor Brewing Company. We speak with a member of the food community here in Winnipeg and the province as well, and I spoke with Morgan and Amber of Good Neighbor Brewing Company. So they're doing a great thing. A ton of community involvement as well with their company. But my plan is to head down to the beer can. A ton of pop-up beer places there, and Good Neighbor Brewing is one of them. So I think even with the heat, I'm going to head down there, grab a couple of pints, and pretty much just take it from there.
Yeah, I hope to get some little brown jugs in at some point. I mean, I can have 25 people in my backyard now. There you go, little 19. You're ready.
I'm ready to go, baby.
For a post-show bevy.
Yeah, that's right.
But, yeah, so I'll have to get out at some point. Although it is hot, so I will be coming inside as well. I can actually, go in a friend's house, limit 5 people max.
Well, either way, let's have a virtual cold one sometime soon. We'll make that happen.
Oh, yeah.
We
or virtual. We can meet in person. We can go on patios now.
I guess so, yeah. Well,
yeah.
What the hell? Either way, let's make sure we have a drink or two this weekend and celebrate what has been actually a successful show. I didn't screw up that badly. And we managed to get this one plugged out there all right. So hopefully Hustler's proud and hopefully everybody in the chat and everybody listening enjoyed today's episode because I had a ton of fun, man. This was awesome.
Yeah, people didn't leave. We've had people here the whole time. We've been talking Stanley, DeMelo, expansion draft. We're going to have the list out, I think, Monday. So Monday it's going to be Leibel in the seat. And Mike McIntyre is going to join us. So we will know about the Jets. Maybe we'll have some more clarity. So I am looking forward to that. So stay tuned to the Winnipeg Sports Talk social media, Sports Talk WPG. hit the like button on this video, hit the subscribe button as well. Hey, we're closing in on 5K subs. We're very close. We're almost at 45, 50.
Very nice.
So we can get there. Yeah, make sure you hit the red subscribe button, hit the like button. It does help us on that YouTube algorithm, or recommend our video more likely. So when you are hitting that like button, the thumbs up, it is helping the channel grow. So we appreciate everyone. And I see everyone in chat. Brandon crushed it, says Owen. Welcome back anytime. And Brando with a solid, satisfactory performance, says Rob. Nicole J says, great show. Thanks, guys. Great job, Brandon. Jeff Cabillas, he says, great job. That was fun. And Leighton Janice says, tell your friends, tell your family, go Jets. So a lot of people still here. We haven't scared everyone off. And
I appreciate the love. That might be the best compliment I've ever gotten. Yeah. Nobody left while I was on. So that I appreciate that. And satisfactory. I've heard satisfactory about me before too. So it was
solidly satisfactory. That's even better. That's even better.
Oh, my apologies. But yeah, this was a ton of fun, man. And I mean, you don't have to convince me to come on. And I was speaking with Huss a little earlier, and maybe I'll hop on sometime during free agency.
Yeah.
And hey, maybe we can talk about what Dougie Hamilton is going to look like as a Winnipeg Jets sometime soon. I'd be down for that episode.
We'll just like Photoshop Jet jerseys on free agents and see what they look like. I think, or just take their head and put them on another person's body. Would probably be easier.
Whoever looks the most natural, that's who the Winnipeg Jets are going to get.
Oh.
One more thing there, Remo, from the chat?
No. I think we're kind of winding it down here. I guess we can look at one quick look at the Cool Bet lines. Do you want to look at Cool Bet? We didn't give them a shout out here. Let me just fire these up. The basketball, we thought the basketball was going to be
they need 5 days off between games in basketball. Remember?
I never got that with basketball where it's like hold on, where's the thing?
Yeah, they've Suns and Bucks game 5 is tomorrow night, actually. But that's always bothered me, even with hockey too, honestly. Like at this point, don't you just want to get it over? Like just play every other day. That's what I would like to. Like this is just dragging on way too long with you.
So it's back to Phoenix. They just renamed their arena, I'm pretty sure. -3.5 favorites. So they're a favorite. We'll see what the reffing is like. And I know the Blue Jays back in action tonight. Robbie Ray on the mound. And they are -270 favorites over Texas. So this is the Blue Jays push. We're heading towards the trade deadline, so watch out for them. And we do have the fantasy golf contest running on DraftKings. I know a lot of people in chat entered, including T. Conapoli. I'm not doing well. Not doing well. But who's in first? Someone in. Let's see if someone's here. Go Jets, Bombers. Oh, I think Dustin Nielsen's in second. Hammerball's in third. C. Platt 87. I've seen him around. Johnny J is fourth. So I do see a lot of familiar names. I know. See Arizona Mitch in chat. He's 12th. There's Tico Pauly's in 13th. There you go. He's been pretty active today. So a lot of familiar names. And we will be doing CFL fantasy, and I'm so hyped for that. We do have the
that's your jam. You're the CFL fantasy expert.
Yeah. There we go. Countdown. There it is. I haven't been using the screen a lot. Countdown to the Bombers season opener. 20 days, 4 hours, 31 minutes. Full crowd.
Yeah, you know what? DB, Darren Bombing, said this on Twitter, and I kind of laughed when he first put it out there, but he might be right. The home opener might be the event of the year in Winnipeg, right? Like you're talking about the first chance to have a major event with fans in the stands there. It's going to be outside. I'm so jacked for that. But finally, we might even have a banner raising ceremony there too. So it very well may be, even with the Jets regular season opener, Bombers home opener might be the event of the year.
Yeah, I think you might be right. I know a lot of people are going out, so we will wait and see. As more details come out about that. But we are fired up for that. But Brandon, we're approaching 3:00. We've been delaying this finish. People are slowly leaving as we start rambling. Let's get the weekend. Started. Hey, crack those LBJs and enjoy the nice weather, right?
Crack the LBJs. So we'll give a shout out quickly to all the family of sponsors here with Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily, Little Brown Jug, Royal Sports, Nick and Nikki DQ Group, Boston Pizza, Not Auto Corp, Breezy Bend, Assiniboia Downs, Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge, as well as Cool Bet Canada. Again, thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening. Thanks for the kind words, too. I really appreciate it. But like Michael Remis said, make sure you subscribe and like to help out the channel. It does a lot of great work, so we appreciate that. And again, a big thank you to Michael Remis for setting this up and helping me get through this together. But that's it. That's the episode here. Enjoy your weekend. Be safe and be cool out there. And we'll be back on Monday with Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Matt Leibel is going to be hosting the show. And then Andrew Hustler Patterson returns on Tuesday. Enjoy the weekend, Remo. Enjoy the weekend, everybody. And we'll talk to you guys on Monday.
Oh, my God. Oh! Shut it down. Let's go home.
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.